Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at more of the PTS patch notes for the Elsweyr chapter. I wanted to look at each class in detail because there are lots of balance changes happening. In this video we'll be checking out the Nightblade class changes coming in the Elsweyr chapter. Before we get started though, just remember that this is the PTS, which means any of this can change. I know many people are not happy with some of the changes in this chapter, particularly with the Nightblade class. Keep in mind that ZeniMax does and has listened to feedback in the past. So consider leaving your feedback on the ESO PTS forums. I know I have. Give them the feedback, give them constructive criticism. Tell them what you don't like and why, and tell them how they can make it better. At least that's what I try to do. So let's jump right into this discussion of the Nightblade class changes. Starting with the assassination skill line and Deathstroke, this is the ultimate ability. So it looks like the base morph and also in-cap no longer get Major Defile, which is a huge change. Major Defile is what cuts your health, recovery, and your healing by quite a bit. It's very powerful. So instead, it looks like in-cap is now getting a different debuff called Minor Mangle. Minor Mangle, I believe, reduces the overall health of the target. This effect takes place if the stun lands, which is 120 ultimate or more. And then Soul Harvest has not changed. So let's take a look at the developer comment. So they're talking about Deathstroke was always very powerful, and they wanted to retain the identity as a mark for death. Okay. And then Soul Harvest was untouched because it only granted conditional bonuses. So I still don't know how I feel about this change. It is a big change. And the way that this affects me is, especially in PvP, Major Defile is really helpful for some tankier targets, and especially healers like Magicka Templars, Magical Wardens, who honestly in Battlegrounds and even some other like CP campaigns, these certain builds can be pretty invincible due to their healing, their passive healing, their healing buffs, their resistance buffs. And so one of the best ways to take down those targets is Major Defile. Sometimes in a battleground, the only way you'll be able to get down, let's say, a really good Magicka Templar is if you have somebody with Major Defile. So I don't know how I feel about this nerf, because it is a nerf, and it does affect a lot of balance, especially in battlegrounds, I think, where healing is already really strong, and now we don't have easy access to Major Defile anymore. I don't think Minor Mangle is a very good debuff, but we'll see. I mean, with some more testing, I kind of just need to see how it plays out. But yes, definitely a nerf at this point with that ultimate ability. This ultimate has just been gutted so many times, from the increased cost to, changing the stun mechanic. Wow. Okay, let's move on. So Grim Focus, they removed the Minor Berserk buff from the ability and the morphs. The Spectral Bow now heals for 33% of the damage dealt if you are within 7 meters. Wow. So Merciless Resolve, which is the Magicka base morph, it gets an increase to 50%, sorry. And then Relentless Focus, which is the stamina morph, it has an increased duration to 30 seconds, and it no longer gives minor endurance. So overall, this seems like yet another nerf. This seems like a pretty big nerf, to be honest. The healing here does not seem that useful. It sounds like they didn't touch the damage. I don't know. They don't talk about the damage that it does. Let's look at the comment here. Let's see. High single target damage. Too many tools on skills they'd continue using even without bonuses, so they got rid of Minor Berserk. And I guess to make up for it, that's why they added the healing? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this healing is not going to be very much. Especially in PvP where we have Battle Spirit. Damage is cut in half, and then healing is cut in half. So this is really, on a Stamina Nightblade, what is this? 15% of the damage done. It's going to be really almost insignificant on the Stamina Nightblade, it seems like. I don't know. This skill just doesn't even seem useful anymore. The main thing, obviously, is that they removed Minor Berserk from the Nightblade class, which is pretty, core to the class itself. For a while, they were the only class that could buff Minor Berserk. And then there's Warden, but of course, Warden is a paid class that we actually pay money for. I don't know, without Minor Berserk, I don't really see myself using this skill anymore. Yeah, definitely a nerf. Moving on, Teleport Strike. This ability will no longer stun NPC enemies. Okay, good, I guess. Instead, targets will be afflicted with minor vulnerability for 8 seconds. And this applies to both players and NPCs. Okay. Interesting. Let's check out the comment. So, trying to make it more similar to other gap closers, where they deal a set amount of damage and have a unique affix. Okay, so I guess that's, some gap closers have a snare, some have a stun. And Teleport Strike didn't have those, so I guess that makes sense. And then they're also saying that this is going to help balance the changes to Grim Focus. I guess because we don't have Minor Berserk on the class anymore, now we have Minor Vulnerability. So there's some things I like about this and some things that I don't. Obviously, Minor Vulnerability is kind of like almost like the opposite of Minor Berserk, where that target takes 8% more damage, which is actually like a group buff, so that empowers your group to do more damage to the target that you are jumping on, so that's kind of cool. I like that mechanic. But you're also really pigeonholing, I think, the Nightblade into using this skill, because number one, they're not going to use, let's say, Crit Rush anymore. I know a few Nightblades who used Crit Rush. Well, you wouldn't do that anymore because then you're losing out on your class ability to apply Minor Vulnerability to your target. So you're kind of just saying, well, Nightblades are just going to use Teleport Strike and nothing else. But then, also, I don't even know if they thought about this. This is a melee ability. So yes, this does kind of make up for the lack of Minor Berserk, but a lot of Magicka Nightblade builds don't use this because they play from a range, especially in PvP or even PvE. You're not going to necessarily use Teleport Strike. Lotus Fan is the Magicka morph to go into melee range on a Magicka Nightblade. Some setups just aren't going to do that at all. So particularly for like solo PvP, unless you're a melee Magicka Nightblade, and we all know how amazingly bad those are, you're not going to get this bonus, and you're stuck with no replacement for your loss of Minor Berserk. So yeah, I don't know. I like the debuff. I like that they put that on Teleport Strike. But again, it's really pigeonholing the Nightblade play style. Even for like a brawler build, you don't necessarily use Teleport Strike at all. So now you're going to have to use it to engage with your target, and it just kind of It just basically forces the class in one direction for DPS, which I don't think is good. And then obviously Magicka Nightblades may not even use this, so I don't know. So let's move on to Shadow Skills Aspect of Terror. So there's no longer a snare. Okay. And it fears up to 3 enemies now. So Mass Hysteria, which is more the common morph, you no longer get Minor Maim. Okay. But they increase the number of feared targets to 6 from 2. That's huge. That's cool. Yeah, the only other I know, like Werewolf Fear, when they buffed that, I think it went up to 6 as well. So very nice to see this get increased to 6 targets. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's going to be really interesting on like a brawler build, a tank build, especially in PvP. Maybe even in PvE, like in AoE CC. I remember reading something about fears no longer cause the enemy to run, but they're going to fear the enemy in place. So even like on a tank build in PvE, this might be pretty interesting. So we'll see. Those changes are okay. Dark Cloak. More changes to Dark Cloak. Is there ever a patch where there's no change to Dark Cloak? I don't know. So it now heals for 4.5% of their max health every 1 second. Up to 8 seconds. Tooltip now states the value you heal for rather than how it scales to prevent confusion. I like that. I noticed Zos doing that on a lot more tooltips, even gear sets, so I think that's very well done. I appreciate that. So it had cost reduction rather than increasing the healing. So now it's going to increase in cost, but also in healing. Okay, let's read the comment. So it said this ability was providing considerable healing compared to what the tooltip implied, while also not providing lengthy enough minor protection. I agree with that. I actually never ran this morph of the skill because minor protection is a great buff, but it was only 3 seconds long, which really was not worth it. So it sounds like we can have up to 8 seconds of minor protection, which may be worth it now. On a tank build or on a brawler, even on a ranged Magicka Nightblade build, 8 seconds of minor protection sounds pretty good. Dark Veil, this was the passive, so they're just reworking the timer to land on flat values, which is good, I think. So Summon Shade, this ability now scales with max Magicka spell damage or stamina and weapon damage. Very cool. So possibly a little bit more damage from our Shade if you're a Stamina Nightblade. So, okay, I like this. I like especially the stamina scaling. I have noticed they are trying to do this on more class abilities to make stamina viable versions of these class abilities, so that's very good. I think that's a good change overall. Surprise Attack. This ability no longer applies Major Fracture. Instead, if you attack on the side or behind, you get a reduction of physical resistance by 5%. This effect cannot stack, but will always prioritize the highest value. Not sure what that means. Let's read the comment. Similar to other changes, Nightblade has less moments of redundancy, so they're saying the Major Fracture was redundant since we have Mark Target. So basically they're saying because you had this ability, which is not that great, Mark Target has never been that good, but because you have that, we're going to nerf Surprise Attack because you should be using Mark Target instead. So I don't think I agree with the developer comment here. I don't think Mark Target was used, especially by a stamina Nightblade who plays in melee. Maybe for like a stamina Nightblade bow build, you would use Mark Target. For a melee build, I would never use Mark Target. It's a waste of a slot. It's a waste of a global cooldown. Why would I want that if I already get Major Fracture on surprise attack? So again, it just seems like they're forcing Nightblades into a certain play style, saying you have to mark your target first before you can burst them down. It just doesn't make sense to me, especially as the quote-unquote stealth class. Putting a marked target on your enemy is basically saying, hey, you're next. Watch out. And so any decently good player is going to block or roll dodge, you know, put on a damage shield, whatever, as soon as they get marked. And then there goes your burst combo that you're trying to line up with this extra skill. So I don't like this change for several reasons. And the reason why they changed it is dumb, to be honest. They're talking about redundancy of Major Fracture. Well, then they should have changed Mark Target and made that skill better instead of taking things away from surprise attack. So I don't know what they're thinking with this. One thing I mentioned over on the forums, if they really don't want to change this, is at least give us a stamina morph of Mark Target. That way we're not forced to cast yet another Magicka ability on a stamina class. So that'll help a lot with sustain for Magicka, and then make it not so noticeable. Make it like a really inconspicuous debuff, so if your enemy's like in a big fight, they won't know that they're marked, and then you can just teleport on top of them and do your burst. But right now I just think it's too obvious when you're marked in the game. So it does the opposite of that stealthy playstyle that they keep on talking about. Anyways, yeah, not a fan of that one. Let's move on. Siphoning. So Cripple got some adjustments. If you're a Magicka Nightblade still, God bless you. Good luck. You did get an extra 2 seconds on your Cripple, so there you go. And you also got 4% more damage. The snare got reduced to 30%, that's fine. And it has a 2-second delay, which is kind of like the new rule for damage over times. And then Debilitate, this is interesting. They increased the snare to 50%, which is a really strong snare. That's pretty interesting because you can cast Debilitate on multiple targets, last I checked. So that's interesting. Maybe more people will start using that morph, I don't know. Drain Power, which we know more as Sap Essence, it got increased by 25%, which is good. And they changed how Major Sorcery is added to the morphs, okay. Power Extraction got another buff to 20% and still grants Major Brutality. Okay, I know you guys really want us to use this skill. We'll see if the damage is good enough at this point. Siphoning Strikes. Fix an issue with the cooldown on the heal. I guess that's good. And then Soul Shred. This is the Siphoning Ultimate. They didn't nerf the heal, did they? Oh, okay. They increased the range on the Tether morph. Okay, that's good. Oh, wait, there's more. We've identified a few more changes and redundancies. Uh-oh. Several sources of Major Expedition. Oh man, watch out. Alright, I'm going to wrap up this video, you guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe if you're not already. Hit that bell for notifications because I will be doing other reviews on class changes for the rest of the classes in the game coming up later this week. Let me know in the comments below what you think of these changes to the Nightblade. Is there anything that you would do differently? Are there any positive changes that you noticed or are excited for? Let us know. And until then, I'll see you guys around in the next video. Thanks.